thought you said Brad Paisley. Brad Paisley, the country singer? What am I supposed to do with this? Oh, hello everyone. Welcome to Hey, Can I Ask You a Questions? A show where I ask questions of people that you want to ask questions of. Today my guest is Brian Haeseley. Brian, welcome to the show today.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for being here. So we'll jump right in. Well, I'm guessing you haven't been on tour with Carrie Underwood.
Last week I was.
Last week. How long have you been a realtor?
I got my real estate license in 2012. I was a real estate investor for about 28, 29 years now.
Okay, so a little bit as a realtor, a lot in the real estate business.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And what is your area of specialty when it comes to real estate?
Well, I'm the director here at Keller Williams in charge of commercial. And how I got into that is we really didn't have a commercial division. My background is 41 years of being a contractor. Mm-hmm. So I know commercial construction, and 27, 28 years of being a real estate investor. I know that investor world. So at that point I took the commercial division and ran with it.
Yeah. So I want to unpack the commercial side of things, but
okay.
You've been in this game a long time. What's one of the craziest things you've ever seen or experienced going in and out of properties?
Commercial wise or investment wise?
Either one.
Well, I had bought a property at a share sale, and when we went in, there was a miniature electric chair, wired, ready to hook up, with satanic symbols all through the house, dead skinned birds in the refrigerator, along with a gallon of perceived blood. And so I'd say that was probably my weirdest one.
That is a weird one. And we see, we go into houses as agents, in and out of houses all day long, and we see some weird stuff, but that's
pretty
definitely that near the top.
And it did have a cord on the end of the electric chair. It was a miniature chair.
Yeah.
Don't know whether it was ever used or not.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So what are some ways that commercial real estate differs from what we see on the residential side?
I believe the biggest thing that you have is commercially, buyers and sellers deal with property via financial issues, and residentially you deal with your properties emotionally.
Okay.
Whether it's the right color or right location or whatever. Commercially is more about the financing side of it and whether it fits.
Yeah, generally speaking, commercial buyers, sellers just evaluating it on a numbers basis. Does this return
Correct.
work for us? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. And then volume wise, how does that work? How does that differ?
You mean as far as the volume that I do versus a residential agent?
Yeah.
In the commercial world, ours is a lot farther in between. The longest deal I ever worked on was 2 years, just a little over 2 years. And so it takes a lot more time to get through a commercial transaction, most times. Mm-hmm. Commercially versus residentially, we don't have to worry about all the government protections of the end user. Mm-hmm. We don't have TRID, we don't have 3-day rescissions and all that residential agents deal with.
Yeah. So in some ways more complex.
Yes.
Some ways less complex.
Correct.
Price point?
Price point perception is that as a commercial guy, you make all this money and you get all these big deals and all that, and Southern Indiana, that's just not the case.
Yeah.
There is a lot more $300,000 or $400,000 houses for sale than there are $300,000 or $400,000 commercial properties for sale.
Yeah.
And the commission basis is just pretty much the same as a residential listing.
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay.
you get to wait for your money sometimes, but sometimes they go pretty quick. Sometimes you get a little, in this world, you get a lot of cash transactions and you get a lot of owner financing transactions.
Okay. So you said you jumped in, no one really was doing commercial when you jumped in and took it over. So what are opportunities for agents that may be interested in getting into commercial?
If you, state law says you have the right as an agent, period, can do commercial.
Mm-hmm.
We here at Keller Williams prefer and would ask you to have some knowledge in the world of commercial. You have a fiduciary responsibility to your client to understand commercial. And if you wanted to get into the commercial division, you would fill out an application, you'd go through some process there. You'd go through a 1-year mentoring process with, if you were doing it with KW Commercial, which is a separate entity of Keller Williams. And in order to, and then you go through that 1-year process of before you turn out on your own or join a team.
Yeah. And would you say the market in southern Indiana is generally supportive of a commercial agent?
Yes, it is. We've got a lot less commercial agents than there are residential agents, but there is less commercial.
Sure.
So I mean, it's percentage-wise, it's probably same as a 1-to-1.
Yeah. Okay. So you mentioned earlier that you started out in investment real estate. That's where the bulk of your experience comes from. So how would an agent go about learning that side of the business?
Well, there's several different associations that I deal with and I belong to. One of them is CREA, Kentucky Real Estate Investors Association. Their main offices are associations in Louisville. They meet the 4th Thursday of every month at Wildwood Country Club. And then I started a spin-off group that meets at Tucker's second Wednesday of every month at Tucker's Restaurant, and we meet for lunch at 11:45. That is a group that I head up, I chair, and we teach, talk, and the good and the bad and the ugly about real estate investing.
So an agent could, is it an open group, an invite where they could come sit in,
More than happy to have
listen, and just really start soaking in the investment side of things?
Yes.
Okay. So I've talked to lots of investors, and they always have mistakes that they learn. Most of them have learned the hard way. So for someone that wants to start out in that field, dangers that they should look out for, what are a couple of things that you'd say to look out for from the very beginning?
Well, in the world, if you're going to a share sale, you need to be where they sell the property as is, where it is. You may or may not be able to get inside the house or the commercial property, whatever it is, to look around. So you're buying it as is, so you really don't know what it is. And you really don't, they should have picked up the taxes and cleared the title. But again, you don't know that for a fact, so you're buying it subject to any other underlying judgments that the foreclosing attorney may have missed.
Yeah.
So you got to be able to understand how to handle that and what happens when you do. We bought them at share sales where we had to tear part of the house down and rebuild it because of termites and didn't have a septic tank and things. So you could get into a real problem. In the investment world, as far as a realtor, and you're going through the MLS, it is a challenge to find anything in today's market. So you got to start looking at other avenues to be able to buy, or have a sharp realtor on your side to be able to know what, when, where, and how to go after it.
Right. So in the case of those share sales, anything that you do that others could copy that helps protect you on a deal like that?
I would highly recommend going to the share sale and watching. If you're going to a share sale, you have to be available to able to pay for it that day. So if it sells for $50,000, you got to be able to pay $50,000 that day for it.
Yeah.
And again, by 4 o'clock that afternoon. If you're going through the MLS or any other type thing, it's just subject to the time frames that you all negotiate.
Yeah. Okay. So you sound like a jump in and learn hands-on, learn from others, listening to others. Are there any books or online resources that you think would be valuable?
Well, Gary Keller wrote a book called Hold 'em.
Okay.
I think it's Hold 'em.
Sounds
Hold. It just says Hold.
Yeah.
And it's a good book. You gotta figure out what you want in your investment portfolio. Do you want to do rental properties? Do you want to do flip properties? Do you want to just put money out for someone else to flip it? That way you're not having to do it. So one of the things that we find, I think outside the box a lot, and that's what I'm known for. And in the world of, as a realtor, they only teach you one thing, and that's just the way you can only do it.
Right.
What we do, and which helped me as I knew everything about it in the investment world before I became a realtor. So I have a little bit of an advantage over a lot of realtors that don't get into that market or don't understand. So come to the classes, get involved with Korea, read the books. I spent probably, when I first got into real estate investing, I actually went to Dallas, Texas and spent $6,000 30 years ago learning this business. And I've spent thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars since then and traveled all over the United States understanding my business as far as the investment side. There is so many ways to skin a cat in the commercial, or I mean in the investing world, that you just got to be able to think outside the box to figure out how to get it done.
Yeah. So fair to say, if someone wants to learn that side of the business, the resources are out there, whether you're meeting people, a group of investors at lunch, you're traveling to seminars, you're reading books, someone just has to be willing to go get it and get the information and persevere through that.
Yes.
Okay.
Actually, I've had several people talking to me and pushing me to become a consultant in the investment world, and I'm considering it.
Yeah.
And so we'll see how that plays out.
Yeah. And maybe a book out of you someday?
Considered it.
Considered it. Okay.
One of the things that we talk about when we have our meeting at Tucker's is we talk about not only the good but the bad and the ugly, because my thought process is if I can teach you the bad stuff, you're going to look for it. So when it hits you square in the head, you're going to know how to handle it.
Yeah.
Whether it be eviction process, whether it be the investment process, what it looks like, what your maximum allowable offer should be on a property, contingencies, what you need to look for, and what you could get yourself into.
Yeah.
You know, I bought a house one time and they were a little upset and because I bought it at share sale and they filled all the traps and the plumbing full of concrete. That was not a planned cost, so you better have some contingencies in place.
Yeah, yeah. So when I watch HGTV, it always just turns out rosy, and what you're telling me is that there's some dangers in buying investment property.
You need to just jump right on in, and if you got a little conservative about it, then I'd highly recommend not going to share sales.
Yeah.
Because you really don't know what you're getting into. If you're getting into investments that, and you got time for inspections and things of that nature, because you go to share sales, you don't make an inspection.
Yeah.
You don't get termite inspection. You don't get all those things. You're just buying it as is, where it is. So understand what your thought process, what you want in your retirement portfolio, or how you're going to do it, and whether it's 1031 exchanges, whether it's Roth IRA self-directed, where you can do a lot of different things with your money to grow your retirement. There's just a lot there to learn.
Yeah. And like you said, there's more than one way to skin a cat. There's lots of different ways to play the investment side. It's just picking away, learning about it, and being smart about it going forward.
One of the things that is important is, and for me, is to make sure that it's a win-win. You know, a lot of times when you're buying properties, you're buying distressed properties.
Mm-hmm.
I bought a piece of property at a sheriff's sale one time, and I went and met with the folks before that. They were losing it, and it was an older folks. They were both medically challenged, so let's just put it that way. They were really bad health, and they were losing their home. I ended up buying it at sheriff's sale. I didn't cause the problem, but I ended up paying $10,000 more than what the sheriff or what the bank bid it in at. Now at that point, that $10,000 was those people's money. They didn't know it. So I went looking for them, found them, and knocked on the door and told them that they had $10,000 of money to go down to the clerk's office and apply for that because it was their money. Now you talk about making some people happy.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so it's that's what makes you feel good.
Yeah. Well, a lot to learn. I appreciate you sharing some of your
Thank you
knowledge
very
with
much.
us today. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being here and joining us for this episode of Hey, Can I Ask You a Questions? Our sponsor today is Diet Pepsi. Diet Pepsi, the cola of choice when the restaurant you choose doesn't choose Diet Coke.